Good afternoon or good morning, depending on wherever you're tuning from. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar titled Conquering Indonesia, ASEAN's FinTech Crown Jewel. Special thanks to the speakers for taking the time to share their insights with us today and BRI for sponsoring this webinar. Uh, with Indonesia being the 16th largest economy and the second most populous nation in the world, it is considered a prize market for fintechs who are eyeing the ASEAN market. However, cracking the Indonesian market is not an easy task, but those who do may find themselves to be in a very lucrative position. Joining us today to give us an insight on the Indonesian market, we have on top there Iwan Kurniawan, who is the co-founder and CEO at Modalku. Below Iwan, we have Jaygan Fu Ponnudurai, who is the CEO of OVO. Below Jaygan, we have Handayani, who is the Director for Consumer Business at Bank Rakyat Indonesia. And below Handayani, we have Diego Rojas, who is the co-founder and CEO at Finantier. Folks, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the show. So let's maybe begin by taking a step back and taking a broad look on things. And maybe we can start with Irvan on top, then Jagan, then Handayani, and then Diego. What are some biggest trends happening in the Indonesian fintech scene right now? And also, perhaps you could also elaborate a little bit more in the space that you are operating in. In particular, for you, Irvan, you are in P2P financing. So, walk us through some of the biggest trends that you are seeing.
Uh, First of all, good morning and thanks for having me on the show, Vincent. And great to meet all of you too on the show. So I think your question is around the latest developments and within the lending space. I think what's the most interesting is just how much fintech lending has rebounded in the pandemic, right? So for the majority of 2020, what we saw was that the majority of the industry has slowed down, right? And the rebound started happening in Q4 of last year, right? That continued to 2021 as more and more players better understood how to lend despite this difficult environment, right? So we've seen fintech lending rebounded. That's number one, right? Interesting trend. And obviously, what's also interesting is the emergence of a new batch of fintech unicorns in the last few months or so, right? May that be in the investment space, may that be in the payment space, right? And I think it's just testament of just how big the market opportunity is, how fintech is truly solving for real people's needs, and that for me is a very welcome trend to see happening in Indonesia. And finally, I think we're all excited in the industry to hear new updates from the regulators, BIOJK, around their digital banking framework, and also to hear feedback around a new banking framework, because I think more and more players are getting into this space, are excited about it, right? So we look forward to hear more. Just some 3 points from me just to get started, Vincent.
Thank you, Evan. And certainly, looking at digital banking, that's the hottest trend that's happening around ASEAN right now. Right? Everybody's jumping into it, and we certainly are hoping to hear more from BRI and OJK as well. Let's move on to Jaygan. Jaygan, walk us through some of the biggest trends you see in fintech broadly, and then maybe in the payment space as well.
Sure, Vincent. Firstly, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. So let me address the big trends in payments at the moment. I see, like, from at least from an OVO lens, we see consumer behavior changing. We see, there's a heavy movement of consumers moving from offline to online due to pandemic. I think that's point number one. Point number two would be around, we are starting to see adoption of digital payments, especially in second tier cities, for example, because there's a lot of awareness from multiple parties where during pandemic, please take care of yourself, please use cashless payments, for example. And finally, from a payments lens as well, as Iwan mentioned earlier, you're starting to see a lot of like Zendit, for example, recently, and Zendit is one of our strategic partners. So Zendit has been, becoming a unicorn. So basically, with that at news, right, it further validates my first and second point that I shared earlier.
And as I understand it, you guys have also seen a near 76% rise in your online transaction in the first half, right? So that's
Yeah.
definitely pointing towards the signs of what you were discussing about. Thank you for
Yes.
sharing your insights, Jaygan. Let's move on
Thank you.
to Handayani. Handayani, why don't you walk us through from an incumbent's viewpoint? What are you seeing is the biggest trends that's happening in the fintech space right now?
Okay, thank you, Vincent. Good morning, everyone. It is it's lovely to be here with you all, and then BRI as a one of the supporting partner to support this webinar for this morning. I think as Jaygan mentions that. The trend on the pandemic shows that the adoptions to digitals getting bigger and bigger, and then also as a bank that already 120 years of age in Indonesia, we see this is an also a new for bank to see this an opportunity to work together with fintech partner to of course enlarge our penetrations in terms of payment as well, and also how we reach the customers to change the offline transactions to online transactions. And we see also in terms of support from the regulators such as OJK and central bank. I think for the bank, it is a new thing for us to see the opportunity to implement the open banking as well as the integrations between the bank and also the fintechs to serve customer better.
Yeah, and certainly BRI has been keeping yourselves busy, right? From partnerships to BRI ventures to, I think there was an education program as well. Thank you for sharing your insights. Let's move on to Diego. Diego, what are some big trends that you're seeing right now? What's some interesting things that's happening in open banking, open finance in Indonesia? Walk us through some of these interesting things.
Sure. First of all, good morning, everyone. And thank you for having the show. A pleasure to share the panel with all of you. So, well, I think the pandemic has accelerated, the adoption of digital services and products. And I think, SMEs, logistics, and finance as a whole, demonstrating and having a great momentum. And many folks, building products and companies operating in this segment are doing a great job, helping Indonesians to transact better and, to actually live their lives in a better way. So yeah, kudos to everyone. So I will say that also on the infrastructure side of things, coming to open finance or open banking or payments, I think what we see is actually a greater awareness, in terms of incumbents, implementing API and implementing infrastructures and being more aware of open banking and open finance. And we see regulators also, in a way, paving the way and actually providing guidelines for everyone in the market, in the ecosystem. So what we saw recently is, for example, the release of the newest standard for payments, the SNAP from BI, Bank Indonesia, which is actually collaborative work that has been, in development for a couple of years, got incumbents and, wallets and major players in the market. So we see a trend towards consolidation of all these standards and awareness that, open banking, open finance, and all these open API standards are here to stay, because effectively can really help people to live better lives and also help innovators to build better products. So we see all this converging and growing, but also we can't avoid to mention some of our great friends now becoming unicorns and paving the way for the new wave of innovation, not only in Indonesia, but across the region. So it's really an exciting time, here in Southeast Asia. And many around the world are acknowledging all that and, coming to help and support companies in the region.
It is indeed, right? More and more unicorns are popping up this year. I think compared to those days when you hear a fintech in ASEAN becoming unicorn, it's a big deal. You're like, wow, something to celebrate. What a milestone. Now it's like, it's great. It's still great news. Don't get me wrong, but it's like, hey, wasn't there another one that just happened last week? But that just shows the kind of growth that we're seeing in this segment, and particularly in Indonesia, where we're seeing most of it, right? So thank you for that, Diego. Let's move on to Ivan. Ivan, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the adoption from the consumer end, right? So, from your viewpoint, what is the propensity of adoption from the customers for digital financial services? Like, what do you think are seeing the most adoption, and particularly in the space you operate in digital lending? Is that something that you've seen the adoption go up over the years? Walk us through, what the adoption rates are like.
Yeah, so specific to lending, in 2016, the number was zero. Zero every year, 0 month. I think it was very, very early. The number has been growing. In fact, I wrote in an article a couple of years ago that it crossed $1 billion mark for the industry around 2018, early 2019, right? And now, actually, just earlier this year, around mid-year, digital lending has crossed the $1 billion mark a month, every month, $1 billion, right? So I just and we're talking about not just 100,000 borrowers or consumers who borrow. We're talking about millions, and what we're seeing, right, is the popularity of and increasingly, right, popularity of buy now, pay later solutions in the market. Right. So if the product from several years ago until today very popular are cash loans, a bucket, as well as just multi-purpose financing. Right. In the consumer financing space, buy now, pay later is very exciting and very interesting. We see a lot more companies doing that. And in the SME space, small business space, I think it's just been growing from strength to strength, particularly in this trade-based financing products, right? So when I say trade-based financing products, what I mean by that is regarding how do you finance for supplies, how do you finance receivables, and so forth. That has been growing really well, right? On the flip side, however, the propensity to borrow could be dangerous, right? We see many consumers borrowing from 5, 10, and if we see a latest news from unfortunate news in the industry, right, that there are people who borrow from 15, 20 players. However, those that are lending to these consumers are mostly illegal fintech companies, right? So, so I think sometimes Indonesians just have such a high demand for lending without necessarily knowing when to use lending and when not to use lending, right? And for me, despite the growth of the fintech industry, the proper industry, with $1 billion a month, which is a fantastic achievement, right? There's a lot more work that can be done to kind of help consumers understand better when to borrow, when not to borrow, right? And so that we can have a sustainable propensity, as well as demand going forward as well.
Not all adoption are created equal, right? And I think there's a lot to be said about maybe there are some gaps in terms of some services surrounding financial wellness. So that's some important points over there, looking at more sustainable approaches to these things. Thanks for that, Evan. Let's move on to Jaygan. Jaygan, what are some areas of digital finance that you're seeing higher adoption rates? I guess for payments, it's quite obvious that it's a low hanging fruit and there's a lot of adoption over there. But why don't you walk us through your thoughts on this?
Yep. So, Vincent, thanks for the question. So let me use the online payments as a baseline. So when pandemic happened, sometime in 2020 March, our offline business were bigger than our online business. Let's fast forward to today. Our online business is basically 20x of offline. So that is the velocity that that has happened throughout 2021 versus 2020. Now, then we launch new products such as investments, OVO Invest. So one of the biggest learnings with launching products as such is it's a differentiated product in the market where we enable instant redemption. So what that means is when we basically buy a certain investment products within OVO, for example, and let's say you go to a store or you're at home wanting to order Grab food or buy something from online merchants and etc., then you realize you don't have enough credit. Now there's an alternative way to top up because you have basically made money on that investments, and redemptions will be on the spot and you'll be able to use that money. So we've seen like rapid growth in that area, especially from a user point of view. And if I'm not mistaken, like we contribute to at least, I think, about 20% of net new investors to the market based on just that two products alone. With regards to insurance as well, some of the significant areas that we see was around trying to sell insurance through like contextual insurance, for example. Like, I mean, to be very frank with you, I think this is no surprise to everyone who is listening, right? Like selling insurance through the app without any contextual flow, it's pretty challenging. So we were very lucky to be part of the Prakerja program, which is a government dispersal program, where we are actually the market leader in that today, and we leverage on that the number of transactions to also pump in insurance there as well, and that we seen some take up. But to be very frank with you, I think there's a lot of homework to be done to improve the retention rates.
Okay, that's something that maybe in another chat we could dive
Yeah.
deep into detail about how to improve that. But in the meantime, thanks for giving us a sense
Yep.
of what the Indonesian consumers are like.
Yep.
So let's move on to Handayani, and of course, being from a bank side of things, you do provide a lot of digital forms of products as well, and you've worked with a number of partners. So maybe you can give us a sense of where do you see a lot of high adoption of digital financial services in Indonesia?
Thank you, Vincent, for the questions. As I mentioned previously, that the pandemic is really changed the customer behavior. So when we take a look on the trend of the transactions, say 2020 compared to 2021, it shows like the usage of the mobile banking, for example, in BRI shows double than the previous years. Double. So it means, right, the adoptions to convenience transactions through mobile is give the the trend for our customer in all segments. The previous before the pandemic, we quite pessimist when we take a look on the say, for example, the market in micro segments. We think that the adoptions in that segment is need times to do the digital transactions, but it's just different in terms of the the result on the pandemic. So this micro segment shows they are easy to adopt that the digital transactions through mobile. And we also work with lots of partner in fintech, be it in a payment or in a lending facility, for example, BNPL, that digital lending, direct lending, and also with electronic money, for example. It shows also that the trends in increase almost 80% last year. So I think the most important for us now, we complete our mobile banking called Brimo as a one applications to solve or to give the solution for the customers. So now we complete all the features, and then if we compare, say for example, before pandemic with current conditions, it's just like the transactions in our Brimo, BRI Mobile, 7 times in terms of volume, 7 times in terms of volume of transactions. Most of them is used for purchase and payment.
I see. Got it. So these are some areas that you're seeing there's a lot of adoption across some of your product lines. All right. Thank you for that insight. Anything else to add before I move on?
And then I think
Yes, go ahead.
yeah. And then I think also in BRI, since we just finished our holding corporate actions with Pegadaian, we believe that we could serve more the customer in lower segment, to encourage them move from traditional transactions to mobile transactions, and using a digital as a platform to serve them, because we should reach out from the tier city until to the tier city. So then we need to to do the efficiency in terms of service to that segment.
Certainly. Thank you for the Handayani. Moving along, let's have Diego on stage to give us a sense of adoption for open banking, open finance, both from the enterprise side of things and also the consumer side of things. Go ahead, Diego. You have the floor.
Sure, thanks, Vincent. Well, since we're an infrastructure player, we're a B2B platform, right? What we see is a strong demand still from lending institutions and buy now, pay later, and different forms of credit. And what we see is that there is demand for more data, there is demand for enriched data that come from multiple sources, because maybe existing models are built on top of telco data only, and with a strong demand for credit, as Iwan was pointing out earlier, right?
Sure.
I think there is a need for better underwriting processes. And that's what we see, where many lending firms are just keep coming to enhance their models, just to ask for different models or for products that we built on top of data. So we see strong adoption on that front. Then there are other segments like InsurTech or even some other platforms, PFM or other digital platforms. But there is another trend that is not that high today, but is growing faster, and it's actually incumbents and banks also being in the other side of the equation and actually looking for innovative solutions to approach new segments on the market, or maybe different geographies, because we don't have to forget that, yes, there is a high concentration of the population in Indonesia in urban areas, right? But also many live in rural areas. So we partner and we work with BPR institutions and with other software providers, and we see that there is demand also for data that can help people living in those places. So I think all this is aligning still with underwriting, onboarding, and better ways to assess people in order to provide credit and services. But what we also see is not only demand for this, but demand for retention, and this is a topic that was touched by Jaygan. Because what you want as a financial institution or building consumer products, you want to build more personalized products and experiences, and oftentimes you need to know better your clients. You need to understand their behavior, and you need to combine what they are doing perhaps in your product, what they are doing maybe in other platforms, and looking at the trends, the behavior, and how they transact. I think this is another trend that is happening, and we see is how companies are looking to retain customers and to serve them better.
So it's certainly a great trend that's projected to grow further, especially with the digital banking framework coming in, right? I'm sure a lot of these new players would even be more receptive towards this whole notion of embedded finance and really trying to push through a lot of these kind of products. Well, thanks for the insight, Diego. So let's move on back to Ivan. And of course, finance is one of the most regulated markets in the world. And for the industry to succeed, the right regulations have to be in place. And what are your thoughts on whether Indonesia's regulation is conducive for growth in Indonesia as a whole, and in particular, the regulation for P2P lending as well? If you have any comments on that, Ivan, you have the floor.
Sure. Thanks, Vincent. And in the lending industry, I think our regulator OJK has been pretty early in regulating the market, pretty wise in terms of balancing between growth as well as risk, and where so in a way, learning from China, 10 years of non-regulation, OJK started to regulate in the first or second year of the industry emerging, and that means that there's a lot of intelligence in terms of the understanding of how the market works. There's a lot more learning that can be done earlier to help us avoid the mistakes of what some other countries have seen in terms of role players just becoming harming the industry, right? So overall, I think in the last few years as well, I think the OJK have been helping to improve some areas within the industry, and for that, a number of things, including the quality of financing, right? The consumer protection as well has been an area they want to strengthen, and that is encouraging the association to roll out ethics code, right? As well as standard code of conduct for collections as well, right? So these are things which for me are very useful to help sustain the industry going forward. Where I think we can work on more together, when I say we, I'm referring to OJK with the Ministry of Communications, with the association and the players, as well as the police, regarding the illegal and fake fintech accounts. And the reason why I'm calling this out specifically is because while there are 120 fintech licensed or registered players in Indonesia, based on the latest data from Ministry of Communications, there has been nearly 5,000 illegal fintech players in the last 5 years. This year alone, the number is in the thousands, right? A couple thousand likely by end of the year, just this year alone. So the voice of the fintech illegal players, and I don't want to call them fintech because they're illegal. You don't call an illegal bank a bank, right? It is illegal, right? So the voice of the illegal, right, is becoming very, very strong. And unlike the past, where in Indonesia we have this thing called bank keliling, which means like pseudo banks offering you, a way to save money, right? They use people to reach out to people. Fintech companies don't use people. They just use instant messaging. They use digital channels. Hence, the need for reaction, the need for proactive education is a lot higher than what was the bar before, right? So while the regulator has been very wise balancing the industry for us, the dark forces, I would say, the illegal forces are what we need to be a lot tighter and stronger at. And I think you will see more from the industry in the coming months on this area. So hopefully we can work more closely with OJK and the other very important figures in the government to combat this area.
Thank you, Ivan. Wow, I mean, I was aware that there is a big number of illegal operators in the space, but 5,000 is a staggering number that I didn't imagine. Certainly a very dire thing that I'm sure OJK is closely looking into as well. Thank you for the insight. Now, Jaygan, over to you. Give us a sense of how conducive the regulation is, and I think in particular a contentious issue that has been coming off and on is the whole ownership issue with the digital payments firm, right? So maybe you can give us an insight on that as well. Jaygan, you have the floor.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So maybe I answer the first question first.
Sure.
I mean, in terms of regulations, we work with both Bank of Indonesia and OJK. So, I mean, if I were to summarize that in a one-liner, I think they have been really, really ahead of the curve with regards to supporting the industry, and that is enabled through, the good relationships that like both parties has at every working level. I think that is very, very important to have that open dialogue with both industry and also fintech. So some of the things that they have recently rolled out would be the national QR standard. I think that has really, really propelled digital payments as a whole. Initially, it will be one of the many things that Bank of Indonesia will be pushing forward, such as under the PBI Payung 2025. So I think I just want to commend them for really, really supporting us. Now, with regards to the second one, right? Second point with regards to voting rights and FOR. I mean, if I were to look at it, right, it's best to just how do I say it? We need to really, really adhere to the regulators. I think there are multiple. If you put yourself in their shoes, there are multiple reasons on why that's being recommended. So, as an industry player, I think for us, the best way moving forward is to have an open dialogue with them, understand where they're coming from, solicit feedback from them, and then execute on the solution after we have agreed on things moving forward. I think that's how I'm taught to operate, and there's no way there's no what do you call it? There's no shortcut, because as a fintech industry in the financial services space, the consequences are huge.
For sure.
So we just need to adhere and respect and work with the times.
I mean, that's certainly a pragmatic way to approach things, right? So I think you'll find that many will agree with that approach as well. Thanks for giving us a sense of some of the developments in the payments regulation, and I think QR standardization is something that's happening across ASEAN, and we're seeing linkages as well. Indonesia linked with Thailand and a lot of other countries. So interesting times. I'm hoping one day soon enough all the ASEAN QRs will be linked soon enough. That'd be pretty cool. Thanks for that, Jaygan. Let's move on to Handayani. And Handayani, why don't you tell us your thoughts on whether or not the regulation has been conducive for fintech? What are some of the recent ones that you think has been very progressive and good for the industry? Sorry, your audio seems to be off.
Sorry.
There we go. No worries. Happens to all of us.
Okay, thank you, Vincent. We believe regulators now support, to grow the financial services because their goals is, to speed up the cashless society and also the inclusions of the financials. So that's proved by, they always ask the industry, the banks and fintech to get, the insight how we can give some thoughts to speed up the inclusions. And I think also we believe with QR standard that now implement, it is integrate and interop for all the banks and fintechs to have the cashless society could speed up and to be implemented. As mentioned before, also now BRI is one of the bank that also participate in cross-border QR Indonesia standard with other country. So I think this is a part of us to see that regulator very supportive on the financial services, be it a fintech or in the bank itself. And it is also give us the opportunity to collaborate more between the bank services and fintech industry. At the end, as a regulator mentions, required us to give the easy access for them, affordability and also reliability in terms of the system. So then we can provide the better service to the nations. I think some of the discussions, to support SPI 2025 been kick off, and hopefully all the participant in industry, support, and then we believe that working together with industry and also the regulator, we could achieve that goal to support the cashless.
Wonderful. And for those tuning in today who may not be familiar with the Indonesian landscape, the SPI 2025 is the blueprint for payments in the Indonesia market. Do a quick Google search. I think you can look up the blueprint to learn more about this as well. Thank you for the insight. Let's move on to Diego to talk about maybe more from the open banking side of things. And I think maybe it could be an interesting area to talk about the maturity of regulation, because I think for the most part in ASEAN, most countries are lagging behind in terms of open banking regulation. How is Indonesia doing, Diego?
Well, Vincent, I think that regulators are doing a great job by collaborating with different players, incumbents, and also here in the private sector. I think many things are happening in the space. I think with the new Standard National Open API Pembayaran, the new standard for payments, actually, that's paving the way for open banking. And it's kind of one of the building blocks. I think when we look at at the global stage of how open banking is being implemented in other places, definitely ASEAN is not at the forefront today, but regulators are learning. And I think we have Europe, a market that was leading all this movement with PSD2. We have Australia doing a great job with CDR, the Consumer Data Right, and I think Indonesia in particular will have its own form, and that will benefit the industry, will benefit consumers, and I think from our work with OJK and with BI, with both in great terms and closely working in different initiatives, we see that there is an approach that is quite open to really learn and to really hear what are the concerns of the industry and how this can be actually addressed and properly implemented at a technical level even, right? So we see this collaborative approach and we applaud these efforts. And I think when we look at Singapore, for example, there is SG Findex, which we might argue that is not purely open banking, but it has it's similar in a way. Then we see other markets, for example, the Philippines talking about open finance. Then we have other regions, other countries, mentioning about open banking. But I think Indonesia very soon, will be at the forefront of all this. And I think with, BIFAS and this vision towards a new payments landscape by 2025 in the country, I think Indonesia can definitely be at the forefront of innovation. And we see all this development converging in a way. And this is actually very important because open banking or open finance actually can really accelerate financial inclusion, which is a huge topic in the government agenda. And regulations are in place to address that, right? To accelerate financial inclusion. And yeah, I think more news will, some new developments will happen, later this year, during next year. But we really applaud the efforts of the regulator, which, for us in the financial services industry or in the fintech space, there is not a way. You can't be adversarial of a regulator. You have to work hand in hand, because what you want is actually, you want to help people, you want to help SMEs, and regulators are there to also address their concerns. And it's great that from our side, for example, we work closely with them and they understand, the potential of, the infrastructure play that we're building.
Thank you for that, Diego. That nicely segues to the next question, actually, because I also wanted to touch a little bit more about financial inclusion, because obviously it's a very big part of the government agenda, and it's also a very important part for the Indonesian society as well. So let's maybe start with Iwan again, and maybe you can walk us through what kind of role you see fintech playing in financial inclusion. How can it do better in terms of fulfilling that whole financial inclusion goal? You have the floor, Iwan.
Sure, I'll start a bit a broader view from
Sure.
the association, and then I will cover about what lending has done and so forth. So if you look at the pandemic, what's been very interesting is that the impact of fintech has been very salient during these times. And sometimes you need a contrast to show the impact of an industry. And what's happening, I think, if you see in payments, as a number of our panelists have very aptly put together, is that the growth is just amazing. And that's because when businesses are not able to sell to consumers offline, consumers have been able, due to digital payments offered by the likes of OVO as well as BRI and others, been able to continue transacting. And that it means that many businesses today continue to operate, right, and do well, or at least do okay, right? On the lending side, I think when many financial institutions stop lending, and that's not just because of the risk, but also due to regulations or fear around overstepping on guidelines by BI or JK. Fintech lending has continued to lend, and that meant that many businesses were not just able to continue operating, they're also able to grow during the pandemic. If we look at a survey that Modalku has done recently, what we talked about was the kind of profiles, demographic of people that we have been supporting during these times. And the survey revealed that about 50% of our SME borrowers have never went to university, right? So we're giving people who, in some, perhaps in some people's views, have little chance of succeeding as an entrepreneur, a chance to succeed, an equal chance to succeed. And we're also seeing about, in that survey, 70% of our borrowers have never gotten a business financing or applied for business financing. So with us, they're getting access, right? And that meant that they're able to either grow to the next mile or plug a financial stress or cash flow gap that they have today, right? So all in all, I think that's how I see the pandemic just making the impact of financial inclusion from fintech just so much stronger.
For sure, for sure. I mean, like this kind of pandemic trend tends to reveal the cracks in the system, right? And that's when you need to have alternative players to come and step up to the plate and serve some of these markets as well. And the stats are interesting to hear. I'm glad to see that, and I think moving forward as we are trying to move out of this pandemic, as we try to rebuild, as we try to grow, certainly lending would be a very important part of that narrative as well. And I hope companies like Modalku and the other 190 plus licensed one will continue to support the industry versus the 5,000 dark forces out there. Thank you for your insights, Iwan. Let's move on to Jaygan. And Jaygan, of course, although you guys have so many product lines, right? Micro insurances, micro wealth. So, walk us through how some of these product lines have helped towards the financial inclusion goal.
Sure. I mean, before I answer the question, right? Like, just a bit of my background. Like, I came from ride hailing, so I was one of the earlier guys that joined Grab in 2013. So like I feel this is like the second wave of things, because the first wave of things was basically educating drivers to use the phones. Like the joy of like selling the idea of ride hailing to drivers at that time, and then the drivers were able to do WhatsApp calls, Skype with their family members, and etc. That really that was a humbling experience. So fast forward to now, I do see that we are doing the same thing again, but for a different segment of our partners, which is our merchants especially. And like with digital payments is basically like the ticket to the dance floor to financial inclusion. So because like this is like when we go down to merchants and etc., like the first step to everything is payments adoption. Then when they are used to digital transactions, they started to see that their money goes into their bank account on time. Then they get more confident in adopting other products as well. So like I mean, to be very frank with you, we got loads to do there, especially from the insurance side and also from the investment side. But from the payment side, I think we did pretty okay. A recent cost study notes that 70% of our SMEs increase their daily transactions by 30%. And during 68% of these SMEs who use OVO increase their income by 27%. And like that 82% of the SMEs also found OVO ecosystem helpful during that pandemic. So I mean we somewhat validated the ticket to the dance floor bit. I think now the question is more of how do we do more for our partners. Yeah,
I love the whole analogy about payments being the ticket to the dance floor for financial inclusion. Thanks for good one. Thanks for sharing your insights. Let's move on to Handayani. From where you guys sit from your vantage point, how do you see digital financial services enabling financial inclusion? How do you see banks working with fintechs to move the needle to drive more financial inclusion? You have the floor.
Thank you, Vincent. I think financial inclusions become the goals for everyone. Be it a regulator, banks, as well as fintech. That's why specifically on this pandemic, BRI is one of the largest bank who support to distribute the social aids to the ultra micro segments. Of course, during that, we collaborate with fintech, to make sure that the distributions also could easily reach to the customers. And I saw that also big potentials, to collaborate between the bank and fintech to serve the ultra micro, be it in terms of the product and as services itself. It is part of the also the inclusions movement, to provide the the product and services that could meet their needs. Say, for example, like we also have a subsidiaries company, BRI Life, for example, to provide the micro insurance. We use the mobile applications to reach them, then to make it easy for them to to join, to onboard the service and the product itself, as well as we provide like collaborations with, say, for example, the fintech, the player, to provide also the their merchants, to support the financials, for example, the financials lending for them. So I think there's lots of product and services that we can collaborate to serve this especially untapped bank segment, to to make it the inclusion successful for Indonesia. Then this year, I think, like BRI, for example, we distribute the social aid to more than 9.5 trillion. It means that we already reach out these untapped customers, untapped bank customers. It is also part of the inclusions for them. I think that's all, Vincent.
Thank you for that. And certainly, there's a lot of more opportunities to work together between banks and fintechs further. Thanks for sharing your views with us. Let's move on to Diego. Diego, what kind of applications of open banking do you see in driving financial inclusion forward?
Yeah, I think still, lending and, providing credit to people and actually providing credit, but also education, financial education. I think these two elements are very important. And as I mentioned earlier, we see a lot of demand in, better underwriting tools and more data, enrichment of the data to really understand better the behavior of consumers and also businesses, but consumers in particular. So they can, access to capital, and with capital, they can improve their well-being, right? So I think all of us in this room and everyone in the market, our mission, our goal is to really help to accelerate financial inclusion. And all of us, we have a role to play, right? From different perspectives, from different angles. And I think in a very candid and personal note, because we're a young startup, right? I think it's not about becoming a unicorn. It's not about, being in the news. It's about really transforming people's lives and building things that are useful for consumers or useful for innovators that actually can provide and build better products for consumer and businesses. So these people can be better off. And we still have a high percentage of unbanked or underserved, meaning that maybe they have access to financial services, but these financial services are not relatable to what they need. And I think with the pandemic, many are using digital services. I think, the likes of OVO are doing a great job, and many are helping people to transact online. Many great friends are helping SMEs with, accounting and building tools for them to digitize their services and what they do. But I think all of us are here, chasing the same mission. And I think in the mid, I think, we're seeing the effects now, but I think the mid and long run, we're going to see Indonesia evolving and again, being at the forefront of innovation, but really building things, long-lasting solutions that are going to help people, because that's the goal for everyone here. And I think we touched on regulation earlier, and this is a very important topic. So I think all these things are converging, and from our numbers and from the demand that we see also from our products and our services, definitely there is a need to, understand people better, to help them better, to build more relatable and better services for them. And yeah, I think we are very excited to be here and just to work with everyone. I think as Ibu Handayani was pointing out, also collaboration is fundamental between corporates and fintech. Again, there is no an adversarial relationship or confrontation between banks and fintech. I think both can really coexist and, help each other, because at the end of the day, what you want is serve your customers better. And I think that's what drives our mission. Yeah, the mission that drives us.
Certainly, and I think, being a unicorn is just a side effect of driving value and creating things of what people want, right? Thank you for that. So for now, we are running short on time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a few questions from the audience, and then we're going to wrap it up with some closing thoughts. Just running through some of the questions we have over here. The first one is for Jaygan. Looking at the overall prospects of fintech for the next few years, and what are OVO's plans in the future. Maybe for question one, can save it for closing thoughts. That sounds like a closing thought appropriate kind of question. So maybe you can just walk us through, what OVO's plans are for the next few years.
Sure. So, in a nutshell, right, I think for OVO, what I think, like the end state is this, right? We want to basically do financial inclusion in Indonesia, and we leverage on our ecosystems to make it happen. I think that is a no-brainer lah. But I think what we need to do better is this, right? Like we need to build better products. We need to be obsessed about the products that we build. We need to be more customer-centric in how we do things. I think these are the things that I feel would accelerate us towards hitting the end state. Because like I've been in fintech since 2018. Like if you were to read all the articles and all, right, the high level statement is all the same. Like it's more of like the details, like how do we get the details? Point number one. Point number two is like Diego mentioned perfectly just now, right? Like the market is so big and it's so complicated that not one player can eat everything. That's where partnerships need to happen, for example, like between other fintechs and also with banks. Like with Diego, we are working on some stuff on the side. With Ibu Hani, like I'm like OVO is also working with some launches that is coming soon. And I feel end of the day, like I also want to anchor on Diego's point just now. We anchor on the customer, be it a merchant, be it a driver, be it a consumer. Bottom line is how can we outserve them well with through partnerships and also better products. I think that is how I see it. I don't want to overcomplicate on a super strategy, because that's what I believe is the right thing to do.
Sure. Thank you for that. And one question for Handayani here. The question is about the security of Brimo and whether you're looking at new features to be launched for Brimo in the near future. The mic is, yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you for the questions. Actually, in terms of the security that implement on Brimo, we always update our system. To make sure that we cope with cybersecurity, the latest cybersecurity system, and also we always do the pen test to make sure that all the security in place to protect the customers' data, and also to prevent the fraudster. And also, we complete our system with fraud detection system with the robust scoring models to make sure that we can, acknowledge, the transactions that is not in a normal base. In terms of the new the features that we are going to implement is, I think we still have lots of the exciting feature coming for a Brimo to complete the functionality, such as we integrate with some of the fintech partner. So then, if our customers want to, consume that service, then they don't have to, move to others applications. They just, use a Brimo to get in apps within our applications. And also, we will complete the feature with the digital onboarding with some of the investment product, as well as the some of the access, for the open API with other fintechs, and also the financials calculator, to make sure that our customer can have the personal financials management by themselves. There's some of the feature. There's lots of interesting feature will coming soon.
I'm sure. Perhaps if they stay tuned to your announcements, I'm sure they'll see more and more features to be introduced over the next few months or so. Okay, so we are running short on time. Let's move on to closing thoughts, and we'll start with Ivan, and then Jaygan, and then Diego, and then last but not least, we'll go back to Handayani to share with us their closing nuggets of wisdom. So Ivan, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Thanks again to Vincent and the FinTech News for this session, and it's been a pleasure and honor as well. I think my closing is kind of, in a way, perhaps to iterate the opening, which is that I think the news of the unicorns, it's paving the way. This is not the end. This is another new beginning for many of us. It is a sign of strong validation. If what we had the last few years ago was early validation, this is a very strong validation that the market is out there, not just for payments, for lending, but for investments and so forth, and that the pandemic has only accelerated the growth. So look forward to kind of be part of that next chapter, while also ensuring that there's a healthy operating environment for fintech lenders in Indonesia.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Ivan. Let's move on to Jaygan. Jaygan, what are your closing thoughts for us?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Vincent. So I think firstly, I would like to thank Vincent from FinTech News, and also Buhani from BRI for having this event. This is, to be honest with you, this is my first event after being CEO. So it's a good dry run for future events. In terms of closing thoughts, I only have one key point. For me is, like we are seeing a lot of validation, as Ivan mentioned earlier. Like new unicorns coming in, new startups coming every day, and there's a lot of buzz within this space today. But I think I just want to leave with one thing, right? Like, like remember the first day that we started the organization, we wanted to, like, what started the startup, for example, we wanted to help someone. We wanted a social element to it. We wanted to support we wanted to drive the nation. Like, those were the very, very noble causes that we started. Like, as we become more successful, right, don't lose track of that, because like sometimes money is sometimes good and bad as well. So I think I just want to leave everyone at that point, and hopefully, like when pandemic is over, we can all meet face to face. Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be nice. And I guess never forgetting why you start is very important, right? I mean, Google started with "Don't be evil." We don't know
Mhm.
where they are now, but that's another topic for another day.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Jagan. Let's move on to Diego. Diego, your closing thoughts for us.
Uh, well, first of all, thanks Vincent and the FinTech News team for organizing the event, and thanks for inviting us, and Iwan and Jaygan and Handayani for being part of this. I think these conversations are great also to raise awareness and just to discuss and debate about all these things. I think 1 hour is not enough. We need to prepare the chapter 2 for this. There are so many things going on out there that 1 hour is not enough. But my final thoughts, or my final line, more related to our business, or to Finantier. I can agree more with Iwan and Jaygan on their thoughts, but we really believe that infrastructure enables innovation, and financial innovation can really transform people's lives. And I think that's our mission here, to really help people out there. But we really need to work closely with each other here, and very soon we're going to see great news, not only about things that happen or companies updates. No, actual impactful things that are happening in the market, or just helping people out there to access better lines of credit, or access or use better financial services. And we truly believe that Indonesia will be at the forefront of innovation very, very soon, because there's so many things going on. There's so many great innovators out there. And not only the market is huge, but there are so many issues in terms of logistics and infrastructure. But all these things are opportunities for entrepreneurs, for innovators. And Indonesia has great talent. And I think we are just so excited to be at this point in time, working with so many great partners and clients in the market. So I'm every day excited to see what's happening today and what's next.
Thank you for that, Diego. Really appreciate it. Let's move on to Handayani for her closing thoughts for us today.
Thank you, Vincent. Thank you, Vincent, from FinTech News, and also all the friends here, Iwan, Jagan, and Diego, that are sharing thought on the discussions. A very productive discussion, even though only 1 hours. I think on the last thought, I see that Indonesia is a huge market and opportunity for us to work together. Instead of we compete each other, I will see that better we collaborate together, and to provide the services to our nations, because the Indonesia need lots of innovations from the financial services to support the goals of government financial inclusion's noble purpose. And I think BRI open our arms, to collaborate with all the fintechs, and then let's serve the country better, so then Indonesia become the strongest country in Asia. Thank you.
Right, perfect. And on that note, it's a perfect note to wrap the session off. I'd like to thank all the panelists for really taking the time to share their thoughts with us today. I mean, I certainly learned a lot about the landscape, and it's been a really interesting conversation. And I did hope that we actually had more than 1 hour, because there's so much ground to cover actually. But again, I hope everyone enjoyed the session, and have a great rest of the day. Take care now, and bye bye.